Yn was floating. No, wait, she was sitting. Yes, definitely sitting. But the weird part? She was sitting on a giant piece of sushi. And not just any sushi, a massive, soft bed of perfectly cooked rice, but wrapped in seaweed, topped with fresh fish that like it just come out of the ocean. She blinked, taking in her surrounding. The world around her wasn't just sushi. It was an entire buffet of every dish she could ever dream of. Plates of noodles, towers of pizza slices, bowls of steaming ramen, endless trays of dessert. Yn, am I in heaven? Her stomach growled loudly and her eyes sparkled. She reached out her hands toward a pile of crispy tempura. Yn, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for my whole life. Her mouth watered as she imagined that first bite, the crunch, the flavor, the pure bliss. But before she could sink her teeth into the food of her dreams, the sky, yes, the actual sky, shattered like glass. Yn, what the? Bang. Bang. No. Not now, she was so close. Her food paradise. Her perfect world of food began to melt away, into blurry colors. Bang. The sound becoming louder with each second, and then she heard her older brother voice, Youngie, Yn. Get your lazy ass out of bed. Her eyes finally flutter open. She blinked, she didn't know where she was. Oh, right. Her room. Her new room, in their new house, which she and Youngie spent the entire last week turning into something livable. Her body was still felt heavy with sleep, and her pillow was damp with drool. Youngie, are you even listening, you slob? I said, get up. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, disgusted to feel the drool still there. She slowly lifted herself up, propping herself on her elbows. Yn, why the hell are you yelling early in the morning? Youngie, early? In the morning? It's literally 5 p.m. Her eyes squinted as she glanced around the room, the light outside confirming that. Yeah, it wasn't morning. Yn, I went to sleep 3 hours ago, so I need sleep. Youngie, 3 hours? What were you doing before that? Yn, unlike you, who was passed out snoring like a pig, I was cleaning my room. I didn't see you helping with anything last night. Youngie snorted, please, I helped plenty yesterday. I painted the whole living room while you were sitting on your ass complaining about the fumes. Yn, yeah, well, I wouldn't have complained if you didn't paint like a 5-year-old. The whole room smells like chemicals because you decided it was a good idea to experiment with mixing paint. Youngie, see, you are complaining again. He said, walking towards her to open the curtains of her room. She hissed like a vampire, shielding her face with both hands. Yn, why are you opening the curtains? And you still didn't tell me why you're disturbing my beauty sleep. Youngie, oh, nothing serious. Just thought you might want to know that the gang is coming over in, like, an hour. We still need to clean the living room and, make some edible food. Unless you want to serve them the same takeout boxes we've been living on all week? Yn eyes widened. An hour? The house was still a mess from the move. Sure, the bedrooms were mostly done, but the living room looked like a bomb gone off. There were paint cans, random piles of books, and blankets thrown everywhere. And food? She didn't even thought about food. Yn, 𝙗𝙧𝙤𝙪𝙧, I totally forgot about that. Youngie. Yeah, if you weren't busy drooling over here like a baby. Yn, please shut up, you are giving me headache. She said, swinging her legs off the bed. And just for the record, I was having an amazing dream, okay? There was food everywhere. Like, endless food. Tempura, sushi, ramen, pizza. You name it, it was there. Youngie, you were dreaming about food? Seriously? She nodded like a child, grinning a little now as she remembered how real it all felt. Yn, yeah, and it was awesome. I was about to eat the perfect shrimp tempura when you barged in and ruined everything. So, thanks for that. He shrugged, not my fault you're obsessed with food. You're always hungry. Yn, I'm not obsessed. I just appreciate good food. He rolled his eyes but didn't argue. Instead, he started walking back toward the door. Yn, wait, where do we need to start from? Youngie, I don't know, maybe just living room and kitchen. Yn, okay. We can fix this. We just need to, shove stuff into closets, and then maybe order something that looks homemade. 𝙗𝙧 raised an eyebrow, order food and pretend we made it. Yn, well, it's either that or we try cooking. And you remember what happened last time we tried that? 𝙗𝙧 winced, clearly remembering the disaster of their last attempt at cooking together. The kitchen looked like a crime scene, and they didn't even manage to make anything edible. 𝙗𝙧, fine, fake homemade it is. Yn, yes, now get out, I need to change. She huffed, looking at herself in the mirror. Her hair was mess, her face still puffy from sleep, but there was no time to care about any of that now. She was in full crisis mode. The second clock struck 6 p.m. The doorbell rang, not once, not twice, but over and over like someone's life depended on it. Whoever it was at the door had no chill. She winced, already regretting every decision that led to this moment. And then along with doorbell someone was thumping on the door like a drumstick. She pulled her hoodie over and walked out of the room. 𝙗𝙧, Yn. Open the damn door or they'll break it down. We just bought this house. Yn, I'm going. Stop screaming at me. She yelled back, the drum getting louder. They must think they're summoning someone from the dead, not politely asking to come in. Honestly, they were worse than children. And 𝙗𝙧 was right, they had just bought the house. The last thing she wanted was a broken door on top of the mess they still had to deal with. She dragged her feet to the floor, and behind the door, she could already imagine the rest of them, laughing like idiots. She yanked the door open just as another round of aggressive knocking started, and there they were. Namjoon, Jin, and Hoseok grinning like fools, all while Jungkook was the point one with his fists still raised, about to hit the door again. He stopped when he saw her, raising an eyebrow. Jin, hello, sunshine. Yn, wow. You all have never been to a civilized house before. Namjoon, civilized and you guys Yn opened her mouth, but Hoseok cut her off. Hoseok, you took your sweet time answering the door. Yn, yeah, because we were working. Not hanging by the door like keychain to open it for you. Ash, who piss on your cereal? Jewel, 𝙗𝙧 of course. Who else have the ability to ruin her mood in such short amount of time? Yn, well that's kind of true. Jungkook, are we all going to stand here? Or you gonna invite us in? Yn raised an eyebrow but opened the door wider, but the thought of slamming the door on their faces was too tempting. Yn, fine, come in. Get comfortable but don't get too comfortable. If you break anything, 𝙗𝙧 will chop off your limbs, his words not mine. They all start to look around, inspecting every corner of the new place. It was the first time any of them seen the new house after all the work that Yn and 𝙗𝙧 put into it. Namjoon grinned, he wouldn't dare. We've been best friends too long for him to kill us. Right? 𝙗𝙧, especially you, Namjoon. I'll cut you into small pieces before feeding the rest of you idiots your mutton soup. 𝙗𝙧 said, appearing out of nowhere, startling Ash. Namjoon looked at him wide eyes and then wiped his non-existing tears. Namjoon, you wound me, 𝙗𝙧. After all we've been through? 𝙗𝙧, don't get dramatic all on me now. Jewel clapped her hands together to get everyone attention. Jewel, I want a whole house tour. Who's coming with me? Ash, me. Hoseok, count me in, too. Yn, hello? Who told you we're giving out house tours? This isn't some visiting site, she said, crossing her arms. Jewel, we're going anyway. If you're not giving us a tour, we'll just take point one ourselves. 𝙗𝙧, there's not much to see, anyway. 2 bedrooms, a living room, and a storeroom. Not exactly mansion material, you know? Ash, small or not, we want to see everything. The entire gang, scattered like children set loose in a candy store. 𝙗𝙧 rolled his eyes, but deep down, he didn't mind, and neither did Yn. The madness, the loud voices, and the constant teasing, it was what kept their bond alive, even if it drove them crazy sometimes. 𝙗𝙧, well, there goes our peaceful evening. Yn, yeah, as if we ever had one with this lot around. 𝙗𝙧 disappeared into the kitchen. Jin and Namjoon followed the others, as they opened different doors, exploring every inch of the house. Jin, 𝙗𝙧, what is this, a storage closet or a torture chamber? Loud laughter followed his words, causing Yn to groan and shake her head. She could only imagine the mess they were making, invading every inch of her and 𝙗𝙧's new place like it was their personal playground. She turned around but startled finding herself face to face with Jungkook, his tall frame over her figure. She was not expecting him to be so close. Her gaze followed up to meet his dark eyes. YN, hi. It came out quietly than she intended. Jungkook, of course, noticed. His grin widened as stepped closer, making the already small space between them almost non-existent. Jungkook, hi. YN, do you always have to sneak up on people like that? Jungkook, only on you. He took another step forward, backing her up until her back was almost against the wall. YN, that's creepy, you know. He chuckled softly, his hand coming up to brush his fingers lightly against her arm. She almost shuddered, cursing her body for reacting so strongly. Jungkook, is it creepy, or are you just flustered? He was teasing her, but there was a sharpness to it that made her nerves tingle. His eyes never left hers, watching every small movement she made, as if he was reading her like an open book. YN, I don't get flustered. Especially not by you. She said, raising her chin, not wanting to look flustered, but, yeah, him being so close wasn't helping. Jungkook, really? Then why are you blushing? Her heart pounded in her chest. She hated how easily he could get under her skin. Her face was warm, and she knew he could see it. YN, I'm not blushing. Jungkook, yeah, I can see that, his knuckles brushing against her warm cheeks. Her cheeks betrayed her, growing even warmer under his gentle touch. YN, stop messing with me. Jungkook, I'm not messing with you. At this point, she could smell his cologne, his warm breath on her skin. Jungkook, and I'm definitely not messing with you when I say I was supposed to be angry at you. She raised an eyebrow, why? He narrowed his eyes, taking a step closer. His serious expression almost threw her off. Jungkook, no messages. No calls. Not even one. She realized what he was talking about. She was so caught up in the madness of moving into the new house that she didn't respond to any of his texts. She gulped, suddenly feeling guilty under his gaze. YN, as you can see, I was busy. But the words didn't seem to satisfy him. His gaze hardened, and he tilted his head, studying her. That made her want to squirm. He slowly raised his hand, his fingers tapped against her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. Jungkook, busy enough not to reply to at least one of my texts, huh? There was no smirk this time, no teasing. He was serious. She exhaled slowly. I didn't mean to, Jungkook, you know how worried I was? You could have at least let me know you were alive. YN. She swallowed, he wasn't being overly dramatic. She knew he cared, probably more than anyone else in her life right now. YN, I'm sorry. I didn't realize. His gaze softened slightly at her apology, but the seriousness was still there. He wasn't angry, not really. But she could see how much it bothered him. Jungkook, next time, just tell me. One text. That's all I'm asking. YN, okay. I'll do better. Jungkook, yeah, but still I'm not letting you go this easy. His words cut off when they heard the sound of footsteps approaching. Loud, fast footsteps. The group was coming back. Youngie, YN. Jungkook. Where the hell are you two hiding? YN felt the spell break as his hand slipped from her chin, but his eyes was still on hers for just a moment longer before he stepped back as well. Jungkook, we'll finish this later. He winked, and just like that, the playful Jungkook was back. She bit her lips and nodded, walking towards the others. YN and Jungkook. Their story was complicated, really complicated. Especially with Youngie. You see, Youngie wasn't just her brother. He was Jungkook's close friend, which made things tricky. Youngie met Namjoon first, almost 3 years ago. The two clicked instantly, bonding over their love for music. Namjoon has been working on a project and needed someone with Youngie's skills. They spent late nights in the studio, creating beats and writing lyrics. But it wasn't long before Namjoon introduced Youngie to the rest of the gang, Jin, Hoseok, and of course, Jungkook. At first, it was just about music. Youngie wasn't really the let's hang out type. He kept to himself most of the time, but Namjoon had a way of pulling people in, making them feel comfortable. Slowly, Youngie became part of the group. Jungkook, from the start, there was something different about him. He wasn't as loud as the others, not as in your face, but there was something about him that drew her in. At first, it was casual, just hanging out when the group got together. But over time, she noticed the way his eyes would linger on her a little longer than necessary, or the way he'd find excuses to talk to her when no one else was around. It wasn't long before Yn got involved too. She and Jungkook were close. Wherever Jungkook went, she sometimes followed, especially when it came to music. Yn had a good ear and was talented in her own right, though she didn't take it too seriously. Through Jungkook, she got to know Namjoon, Jin, Hoseok, and eventually, Jungkook. She tried to brush it off. After all, Jungkook was right there, always hovering like an overprotective hawk. And besides, she wasn't sure if what she felt for Jungkook was even real or if it was just some passing attraction. But the more they spent time together, the harder it became to deny the feelings. A few months back, they stopped pretending. It was one of those long nights at the studio. Everyone else left, and it was just the two of them, sitting on the couch, laughing at something ridiculous that happened earlier. That night they kissed and everything changed afterwards. If it was complicated, it definitely become more complicated to keep their hands off each other. They weren't in a relationship. Well, not one with a title anyway. They hadn't said the words a boyfriend or a girlfriend, hadn't made anything official, but they both knew they felt something for each other. Something real. They were seeing each other, going on dates. It was always something casual, like hanging out or grabbing food together. But Jungkook didn't know. No one did. And that made it both exciting and complicated. It wasn't that they were keeping it a secret on purpose, but neither of them felt ready to explain what was going on, especially not to Jungkook, so for now they were playing this side and seek game. Jungkook, alright, idiots, we need to choose something before we all grow old. What's the plan? Ash, I say we pick something totally random. Everyone has to watch whatever comes up. Jin, that's a terrible idea. Namjoon, then do you have another plan? Jin, nope, he said, popping the AP out. Jungkook, fine. Let's just get it over with. After a few more rounds of arguing, they all agreed to play a random selection game. Each person would take a turn scrolling through the list with their eyes closed, and wherever the remote stopped, that would be the movie they watched. It was chaotic, with everyone yelling out random suggestions and trying to sway the choices in their favor. Namjoon went first, his fingers stopping on a romantic comedy. The groans were loud and instant. Absolutely not, Jungkook deadpanned, rolling his eyes. We're not sitting through that. Ash, why not? You absolute romance killer. Jungkook, because I don't hate myself enough to sit through an hour of cringy lines and unrealistic couples. The next few rounds were just as bad, with everyone landing on either too serious or too cheesy movies. When it was Yn's turn, she closed her eyes and scrolled, ignoring the comments from the others. When she opened them, the screen had landed on some obscure horror movie. This one, she asked, raising an eyebrow. The groans were louder this time, but Jungkook shrugged. Why not? At least it's not a rom-com. I'm in, Jungkook said from behind her. With that decided, everyone began to settle into their spots and the room became a mess of pillows and blankets. Yn was squeezed between Ash and Jewel as they were sitting on floor leaning on couch, and Jungkook was on couch with Jin. His leg brushed her sides easily as he stretched, and she tried not to notice how close he was. Halfway through the movie, Ash suddenly yelped, jumping in her seat as a particularly loud scene played out on screen. Nope. I'm done, she cried, hugging a pillow to her chest. Yn chuckled, nudging her. It's just a movie, chill. Ash, you say that now, but wait until something jumps out at you. Jungkook took the full advantage when everyone got engrossed again, his foot softly caressing her sides. No one will notice. Yn stiffened at her place. You're not scared, are you? His almost a purr in her ear, leaning down. She rolled her eyes, of course not. Liar, his leg pressing fully against hers now. The heat from his body made her hyper-aware of him, and it took everything in her not to react. I'm not scared, she said, though her heart was pounding now, definitely not from the movie. Jungkook chuckled softly, leaning back just enough to let her breathe again. Jungkook threw a pillow at Hoseok at one point. Quit hiding behind Namjoon, you coward, Hoseok, I wasn't hiding. I was, making sure Namjoon didn't get scared. Jungkook. Yeah, sure. Jin beside her already had his eyes closed. Just tell me when it's over. The moment the credits rolled, everyone sprang up for a snack and bathroom break. Chips, soda cans, every kind of unhealthy snacks on the coffee table. The second movie was a romantic comedy this time. Ash and Jewel was delighted. Jean was now sprawled out across the floor. With a blanket, Namjoon claimed an armchair, and Yoongi was still glued to his spot, while Yn was now curled in the corner of couch. The dull ache in her stomach from this morning started to increase, making her wince slightly every now and then. Wrong damn timing, she thought bitterly. Of course, her period pain have to kick in now, just when she was finally relaxing. With friends. She tried shifting her position, but no matter how much she shifted or tried to find a better position, the cramps only seemed to grow worse. The heat from the blanket around her did nothing to soothe it, and her insides felt like they were twisting. She hated this. Why did her period always show up at the worst possible moment? Halfway through the movie, it became too much. She shifted uncomfortably, her legs stiff from curling them up so tightly. Sighing, she finally gave up. She can't sit through the whole movie like this. She stood up slowly, trying not to draw attention to herself as she slipped out of the living room and headed for the kitchen. Maybe something warm will help. Warm milk or tea, anything to calm the cramps down. She padded into the kitchen bare feet, grabbing a mug and setting it on the counter. She opened the fridge, pulling out the milk. Stupid cramps, she muttered under her breath, annoyed with her own body. What she didn't notice was Jungkook, who was quietly followed her into the kitchen. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching her with concerned eyes. Jungkook, you okay? Yn jumped, turning around quickly. She hadn't even realized he was there. Yn, I'm fine. Just getting some milk. He raised an eyebrow, clearly not buying her answer. He took a step closer, but his eyes softening as he noticed the way she was holding her stomach. Doesn't look like you're fine. She opened her mouth to brush him off, but another sharp cramp, and she let out a quiet hiss of pain. Jungkook, cramps, she bit her lip and nodded, embarrassed. Yeah, stupid timing. Jungkook, how bad is it? Yn, it's fine, she said, though her body language betrayed her. Just the usual. Jungkook wasn't buying it. He known her long enough to tell when she was trying to downplay how she felt. He stepped closer, his hand on her lower back. Jungkook, if you are in pain, you should be resting. Yn, it's fine, really. It's not every day we get to have a sleepover. Jungkook, it's not the last one either. You come first. Go and take some rest. He took the mug from her hands. I'll make this for you. Yn, you really don't have to. I'm not dying or anything, just some cramps. Jungkook turned to look at her. I've seen how bad it gets, Yn. So no arguments. Yn surrender her hands. Fine, I gave up, I can't win against you. Jungkook, good. Now go to your room. I'll come later. Yn, if we both disappeared they would be suspicious. Jungkook, doesn't matter. She sighed, but a small smile formed at her lips. I'm not going to my room. She said, not even giving him chance to speak to before walking away from him. He watched her, sighing at her stubbornness. A few moments later, Jungkook found her curled up on the couch, but he handed her the tea and settled down beside her under the blankets. Thanks, she whispered, her voice sipping of the warm drink. It was soothing, but the heat from his body beside her was even more comforting. Jungkook's gaze drifted towards the rest of the group. Ash's head was resting on Namjoon's lap, and Namjoon was snoring softly. Jean was out cold too, resting his head on sofa. 𝙗𝙧𝙤𝙪𝙧 and Yoongi were the only ones still awake, but they were far enough away. He reached over and turned the lamp off, that was illuminating their side. Why did you turn it off? Yoongi said from across the room. Jungkook, almost everyone's sleeping and the light was bothering me. Yoongi grunted, not caring enough to ask further. Jungkook leaned back, almost lying down on the sofa, his legs spreading out and taking up more space. Yn slapped his leg, annoyed that he was stealing her space. Come here, he said, taking her mug from her hands, placing it aside. Yn raised an eyebrow, giving him a questioning look. Here. Where? He spread his legs even more, making space for her to sit between them. But she glared at him, whispering, are you out of your mind? His grab her wrist, pulling her toward him. She let out a small squeal, her back hitting his chest as he settled her on his lap. Now she was practically laying on top of him. What are you doing? They'll see, she whispered, trying to sit up, but his grip tightened just enough to keep her in place. He handed her the mug back. I told you, it doesn't matter. She would lie if she say this wasn't comfortable. But the warmth of his body pressed against hers made it impossible to focus on anything else. His legs were on either side of her, his chest firm against her back. She took the mug back. His hand rested on her waist now, his thumb rubbing small circles against her side. It was comforting, yes, but there was something intimate about the way he held her. Relax, his lips were so close to her ear that she could feel his breath every time that he exhaled. Yn tried to stay still, tried not to react, but the closeness was making it hard to breathe normally. Comfortable, he asked, letting her know he just wanted to help her feel better. She nodded as she finally let herself relax 𝙗𝙧𝙤𝙪𝙧 against his warmth. She heard that cuddling was supposed to help with period pain, but this was so much better. His body heat seemed to soothe her more than any painkiller could. It was after a few seconds his fingers started to tease her skin, his hands slipping under her shirt. Behave, she let out immediately swatted his hand away. He chuckled, a low, deep sound that vibrated in her ear. That sound alone sent a shiver through her. It was dangerous how easily he could affect her with just a laugh. Sorry, he murmured, not sounding sorry at all. His lips pressed a soft kiss, just beneath her ear. She clenched her fists, trying to keep her cool, but it was impossible. He was driving her insane, and he knew it. His hand moved back to her waist, settling where it were before, but this time he was careful, his thumb resuming its slow, soothing circles. The repetitive motion was oddly comforting, and slowly. Better? She nodded, biting her lip to keep from smiling too much as they watched the movie together, not realizing that two hawk-like eyes were watching the whole scene.